In conversation now with Umang Vohra, the MD and Global CEO of CIPLA. Umang, good morning. Good to have you with us, and this time on earnings. Let's talk about the COVID-related products first. The impact in Q3 that you've seen, and whether or not you see that actually reducing going ahead.
Well, COVID-related drugs are completely linked to the COVID cases, and I think they're falling off in India. And, we had guided saying that we believe 25-30% of this sale would continue, right? Depending on how quick the vaccination effort, etc. is. We're still holding good to that. You will see in Q4, though, a slight moderation of the COVID sale in India because the numbers of cases, thankfully, are much lesser in the quarters going ahead. So you will see quarter cases coming down. We've guided saying that, roughly about 3 to 5% of our revenues are COVID. And so therefore, there would be some fall off from the Q3 numbers. But by and large, I think we're tracking to a very respectable growth over the previous year, even excluding COVID. In fact, our India business, without COVID has also beaten market very, very significantly. And if you look at a consumer and generic business, the story stays the same. So yes, sales will moderate from here. Actually, we've had a pretty good quarter with all the businesses coming in together. I do expect Q4 to moderate because also India has seasonality that is usual of Q4. So we will moderate slightly and marginally from here, but I think the traction and year-on-year growth should continue for CIPLA going forward.
So margins have got a flip in April due to the digital move as well. Do you think a certain percentage of margin will actually stay back on account of that?
So we are keeping a part of that we believe should convert completely to digital. And our objective is to try and keep that completely the way we are seeing it in this quarter. But I think some of this will return to the normal, but we are holding on to our cost targets quite aggressively.
Right. Umang, help us understand what India's sales has been like ex-COVID, and what is the growth as well as the sales outlook that you can give us at this juncture?
We see a branded portfolio as a key to growth. I think the branded portfolio is a very significant part of our business. It's growing very strong. And I think that it's quite clear that we think that this will continue to beat market growth. In fact, our generic portfolio is also a branded portfolio. It's not as if the branded portfolio is only the prescription business. But our whole focus going forward is going to be big brands. It's going to be making big brands bigger and driving efficiencies of brand promotion. So yes, the focus on branded business will be very strong in India.
Right. The inhaler that you recently launched in the first quarter, that's been gaining solid market share as we understand. Tell us about the stickiness of the product and if it's going to help you gain further market share or not.
So Albuterol, these are sticky product categories. Once you launch into a limited competition product category, they pretty much stay, they stay sustainable for a long period of time. So Albuterol, we launched it in April of this year, and we're about 9 months into that launch. I think we've reached about, I would say, a prescription share of close to 14-15%. We've guided that we want this share to increase marginally, which is what we're, increase marginally quarter on quarter. And we're not guiding to a total number, but, it's a fair market and everybody has a right to win and play. And that's what, we don't want to guide a certain number, but we expect market shares to creep up quarter on quarter as we go ahead. So Albuterol, these categories stay sustainable. Even if you have more entrants coming in, there's reasonable belief that this category would have probably more volume growth and possibly lesser pricing growth.
So will growth in the US markets then be led by more such complex inhalers over the next 2 to 3 years? Is that a trend that you see further launches on that front?
Yeah, and I think we at the recent analyst conference, the JP Morgan conference, the company had come out with its investor pitch, which is on our website. And there we're trying to say that a large portion of our incremental pipeline in the US, of the 300 to 500 million we've guided, a large portion of that's going to be inhaler growth. So it's going to come out of inhalers, out of our injectable franchises, the long-acting injectables, and some complex generics. So if you add those three together, you will get that. So that would mean that we would probably be launching 3 to 4 inhalers during the time period of the next 3 to 5 years. That's going to be a significant portion. We expect to be doing the same in Europe. We expect to be driving our franchisees of lung in India very significantly. And I think CIPLA's goal of being, of taking the lung leadership position here, of being the company that sells the highest number of inhalers worldwide, that's something that really inspires us and drives every CIPLA employee to do more and better.
Okay, and looking at growth, do you need to invest more in capacity? If we're looking at PLI, if we're looking at API businesses, would you say the response has been better than anticipated in the first round?
I think on the capacity side, we are investing constantly. We've never, shied from investing in building capacity for the respiratory side. So we've done that quite significantly. And we will continue to invest wherever required, right? Whether it's for the markets in India or the US or, for that matter, South Africa or any of the emerging side of the world. We believe we have enough capacity. And where we don't have it, it's already part of our CapEx plans, and we add incrementally every year. On the API PLI scheme, it's interesting. I think what started off as a scheme that was probably suited more towards antibiotics is now becoming a little broader. We want to play in some of the APIs, but it depends on whether the government would grant those as part of a scheme that merits attention and warrants, economic focus for us. So we would be interested, and we are exploring the space. And where we find that the APIs are strategic to us, we will invest in them.
Right. Umang, we always are fascinated about US markets and we always talk about the growth in those markets with you. But wanted to understand, what about other emerging markets and smaller markets? Is volume growth higher there?
Yes, I think the emerging markets have become more. So there are 2 or 3 themes globally that are happening. The first is reliance. Self-reliance is now everyone's theme. Everyone wants manufacturing plants in their country. Everyone wants, everyone wants to control API production in their country. So we're being approached by a lot of countries on how we can help them create their self-reliance manifesto. And I think we've, by and large across emerging markets, they've been satisfied with what CIPLA could supply, and we haven't seen the pressures in some of those markets of the world.
Sure. We've also seen among Indian companies move towards biosimilar or complex drugs as well. Have Indian pharma really moved up the value chain in that sense, and has it happened already, which perhaps could lead to higher growth too?
I would think so. I would definitely think so. I think the pharma universe, till about when we all started around the 2000-2005 time period, it was big to get a drug approved in the US. And then the industry is matured now to begin to develop drugs, which are difficult to do, inhalers and otherwise, and vaccines now specifically for India. So I think this is the enterprise of innovation. This is the enterprise of all the chemists and biologists in India who can create new drugs as well as supply them and become the factory for the world. So I think this is the new future. A lot of Indian companies would step up to this challenge, including CIPLA, and I think we're all excited about the ability to do that.
Okay. Dr. Reddy's actually told us post numbers that there was, an erosion in the base business generic pricing in the US. Do you also see the same thing happening? Is that something that you've seen at CIPLA as well?
I think the US generics always sees price erosion. It's a factor of the market. And every quarter and every year we see price erosion. The question is the quantum of the erosion. And about 3 years back, there was very significant erosion, almost to the extent of 10 to 15%. I think the erosion is moderated somewhat, but every quarter there's erosion. And that's how the business models deal with it in the US. So yes, if your question is, did we also see price erosion in the US? Yeah, we see it every quarter and every year.
Okay, and post the budget now, and the increased emphasis on healthcare, do you actually see spending going up on healthcare? If we take a look at the GDP to healthcare ratio, even worldwide, how do you really see that shaping up?
Both. I would say both. I think the direction in the world pre-COVID was already moving towards people caring for their health by themselves. That means They wanted to be diagnosed by themselves. They wanted to look after themselves. They wanted to have information at their, information on their screens on how to manage diseases. So they wanted to be more in control of their health. And I think what COVID has taught is just the ability for the healthcare system to be ready for a pandemic. So I think this will accelerate. I would think penetration in a lot of the markets that we serve outside of the US and possibly Europe, emerging markets, India, will be significant. And I think in the US and Europe, the pandemic response preparation is going to be significant considering what those countries have gone through. So I see deeper penetration. I see pharma growth growing quite significantly. I see a lot of innovation in diagnostics and point of care, and I see and I see a lot of preparedness for future pandemics.
Thanks so much for joining us this morning on those earnings.